Captain's log, not yet connected to the fleet. This is Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny and sometimes smart podcast covering all things new and classic Star Trek. I'm your luckily old enough to bypass assimilation captain, Myrriah Gossett, and with me on the view screen we have
Clyde Haynes, Borg, Changelings, and Enterprise D. Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh, that's good. And I'm Paul. I shot Elizabeth Admiral Shelby Satachet.
What? What an admission of guilt tonight. We are
But you
obviously.
But I did not shoot the ensign. I shot the Admiral.
Just you have to keep one more. There you go. You're right there.
There we go. Don't sing too much, Paul, or else we will get taken down for copyright infringement.
That's right. She's right.
Tonight we are reviewing and discussing the 9th episode of the final season of Star Trek Picard, entitled Vox. This was directed by Terry Matalas, written by Sean Tretta and Kylie Ross. First, just a couple of reminders before we dig into some things. Paul, how can people share the show, find things about this show? Where should they go?
Well, everyone, I'm supposed to remind you that to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube.
Or all three, if you feel like
all
it.
three, or definitely all three. All the links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love this content, which I personally hope you do, for just $2 per episode, you can help us and you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Thank you. Clyde, how should people interact with us in the chat tonight if they need to get our attention?
Well, if you are like Nicole or Takako or Sean or Steven or Raymond and you are live in the chat, then all you have to do is type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in your chat, and we'll take a look at your comment, your question, or your thought. Now, we get to that special time of the show, and you want to tell us what your overall feelings were about this episode, then make sure that you type capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat, and we'll take a look at your comments.
Indeed. And I think it might be time for that special time in this show where we give you some spicy thoughts, some ideas, some overarching opinions. It is time for some
Hot freaks!
It's time for some hot freaks.
Hot freak.
Paul, let's let you
Me.
off. What did you think of this episode?
It was a great episode. It was a great episode. Like, the episode before, like I had our episode, I was like, I hope it's not the Borg. And when it just started off as the Borg, I was like, but what they did with it was pretty good. And like, there's a lot of like nice things about this episode. I as I was saying offline, a lot of Clyde bait. And we got to see the Enterprise F, which I was like going, oh, that's hot, that's nice, the new hotness, and then we got to see it quickly assimilated, so that's less hot, but like regardless. So yeah, I thought it was a good episode. Like I don't know if there was a lot of emotional payoff. It was just it seemed like a lot of plot payoff. So I enjoyed it for its spectacle.
Clyde, thoughts?
So I've got a number of thoughts, but one is I do remember saying either last week or the week before, we were talking about who do we think we're going to see. And I said, when you think about this franchise, the biggest big bad that ever was the Borg. And so the fact that paid off, I was just like, that makes sense. I'm not even going to say I was right. I'm going to say that makes sense. And that was what it was. There's a couple things in there. I'm like, I wish we could have got there faster. It would have been nice. Like, if we're gonna have the board, I could have definitely used the reveal an episode or two, or at least a half episode in advance, so we can kind of work up to it. I was disappointed. Look, as a dad, I was a little disappointed in Picard. I thought the scene between him and Jack's looking for him to be a father. He's freaking out because Deanna has left the room, right? And amongst my friends, I tell the story. I was having a medical procedure once, and I had a technician who was giving me an ultrasound, and in the middle of it, she dropped the ultrasound wand and ran out of the room. To have someone do that to you is really alarming.
Yeah.
So the fact that Deanna just, I'm not even gonna go through my emotions and what happened, but I was thoroughly freaked out. So the fact that Deanna would get up in this moment, Jack has opened up himself to her, and he's been carrying around this red door for so long, and then she just like runs out of the room without explaining anything. So he's in this emotional state. Picard comes in. He's looking for the first time in his life. He's looking for his dad to say something. And Picard goes into Admiral Picard mode and be like, yo, I got the security outside. We gonna take you away somewhere safe. A half a beat with some compassion, a hug and embrace, I think would have meant everything to me and maybe some other viewers. That's my biggest complaint. But overall, look, I feel like this is a show that I wanted it to be from day one. It's a TNG reboot, and I'm here for it all. So ultimately, I love the episode. That was just that one scene that, as a dad, I was like, I wanted more from Picard. I just wanted more.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dig into that more. I think my overall hot freak was my biggest thing is I wish we had gotten the Borg reveal at the very end of last episode, because we could have had a little bit more of a time at the top of this episode, perhaps for some emotion. And also, I think to really earn Jack escaping the ship. That was probably like one of my biggest nits to pick, was just I wasn't sure if we really earned. It's like, I know he has to escape and he has to go to the Borg Queen. I know that's where we have to ultimately go. But it's like, I wanted to feel that was more earned.
Myrriah, somebody said, what are they doing with these shuttles on the Titan?
Like we just showed how we could use like secret force field doors like not that long ago. So like, why weren't some of those in place? Just a thought. Total lockdown once there's a Borg on the ship. Just a thought. But anyway,
I blame the captain. I blame the captain of the Titan.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Oh, there's an all now. Look at you guys.
There's an all. I got
one. I was on Sean's side day one.
I truly hope they revive Shaw in some way. I don't think that looked like a pretty distinct shot to the heart death scene, but it would have been nice. But yeah, overall, I loved the nostalgia bombs of the episode. I feel like I could have used some of this earlier in the season just to give us some more time to wrap this up, because my biggest question is, we end this episode with absolutely no plan.
They're going to, what you call it? The plan is like they're going to Earth. Boom.
Do what exactly?
Ship.
Yes. With a 35-year-old ship. No, it's even more than that. It's older than that. Like with a 40-year-old ship that's a salvage. Because
it's barely functioning.
Got some weapons, not all.
Against an armada of the
latest in Trek.
plus Borg. So
plus a Borg hive mind, and that's
nothing to be concerned about. Let's see what some of these hot freaks are from the chat. Carmen says, I loved seeing the Enterprise D and the bridge. That was great fan service. I agree. I thought the carpet line made me giggle. And then maybe groan a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Kian says, hot freak, love seeing the 1701D in full HD glory. Agreed, but how are they going to wrap everything up in one episode? I also have that question.
Maybe it'd be an hour and 5-minute episode as opposed to
the 45. Yeah. I mean, tonight's episode was only 46 minutes long, including credits. There you go. And we spent 6 minutes getting to the Borg reveal, just so we know.
Opening a door. Just opening a door.
Opening a door took 6 minutes. Hot break from Phil. Picard showing up with the rushed ending again. Love the nostalgia, but I think we needed more time to digest some of this. Lise, this was a dig at Gen Z, a bunch of mindless drones.
I can see that.
Raymond, it all comes back to the Borg. I actually wanted to shout out to Jessie Gender, who I love. If y'all haven't checked her out, she does really incredible videos and recaps on a variety of kind of nerdy media, all kinds of stuff. A really great cultural commentator. And she had a video kind of talking about the potential, it's kind of long. So to sum it up, summarize it a little bit, was just sort of like the allegory of the Borg and what is this metaphor they're trying to use this season. And she's reading it as a potential that the Borg is this like queer family allegory, and that Jack is running to this family because he's been, rejected by Picard. And so I think that's where I'd love to dig in, because I kind of see it, and I want to get y'all's thoughts on it, just because Jesse sort of inspired this train of thinking for me, which is like, I agree with you so much, Clyde, that Picard truly dropped the ball in dadding it up at all. And I don't understand why he did not bring Beverly with him into that room. Because I think that 1-2 punch would have made more sense empathetically, right? In this big reveal of who you are and what's been going on. And so I think he's like, when you rebel as apparently Jack has just not had an actual rebellious phase. And so his ultimate rebellious phase is to go running to the Borg, because it's like, I'm going to prove myself against this thing that I am. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What do y'all think about that?
I will mildly defend Picard. I understand both of your perspectives, and and as a non-father, I have the advantage of never having made a parenting mistake. So I don't know if Clyde has had any parent, but I have a perfect record. So
I made about 6 today.
So with that said, Picard's been a dad for a week. I mean, I'm just saying, and this is a grown robot man plus.
My thing is, he's been in a leadership position for a very long time. And if he was to think about this even as like a member of his crew, I think if he had reframed it even in that way.
Like I said, this is not a strong criticism. I could also say he's also obviously triggered.
Right. 100%.
It goes. He literally goes. It can't be, it can't be the Borg. I'm clean. It's like, it's not me, I didn't give my kid this congenital disease. Like that's the first reaction, right? And then you accept that, and then you go in, and then you be the admiral, because that's what your training is. I'm not excusing this, nor am I disagreeing with either. I was watching it, and then watching it the second time, it goes, dude, this is wrong, man. You kind of like. You're really screwing the pooch here. But that said, I can see how someone could make that mistake. It disappoints me that Picard makes that mistake, because I could also go the other way. Dude, you've had an alternate life where you were a grandfather, and and so you know how to dad then. So so I take it all back. Picard, you're a failure.
Go ahead, Clyde.
I was gonna say, I think something that you mentioned, Paul, and something that Choopy says is that Picard has had a way longer traumatic relationship with Locutus than Jack. I think when we think about that trauma, I have to take that into consideration. You're right, Paul. He was triggered. This whole idea is he thought that he has been done, with Locutus. He thought that he had come out of this Borg assimilation and was fine, only to find out that he has been a pawn in their scheme forever. And now, right, the Federation is on the brink of destruction. And largely, again, it's his fault, right? It's still, he's the cause of it. And so I think he's caught up in his own trauma and grief. And it's hard for him to really be emotionally present for Jack, which, Myrriah, I like what you said earlier. Why not bring Beverly into this, right? He said the statement of, I'll go, I'll tell him. Well, Beverly should have been like, nah, man.
There's some good reasons to not bring Beverly. For example, Picard's a positronic robot, so Jack can't control him.
I guess that's true.
That's one safety aspect from a it nice. Did help that the guards got controlled. But
why bring them? That was dumb.
Yeah, but I could see how you just make some tactical errors, right? When you're really emotional, you say things, you do things that are just stupid, and I have personally have never been assimilated. 100% track record on not being assimilated here. So you're
really batting 1,000 here, Paul.
I'm the protagonist of
really having a main character moment.
That's right. Thank you. Anyway, but like, I forgive it. Although, like, from a craft standpoint, I'm watching it and I'm going like, oh, it could have been done. It could have been done differently.
Yeah, because I do wonder what the like emotional impact would have been like to have seen Picard perhaps go outside of his normal kind of bubble and give a little bit more emotionally to Jack, and then to have Jack push back in that way. It could have maybe had a little bit more of that devastating kind of pushback there, and feeling of betrayal. From there, Carmen asked an interesting question. We're really left hanging with why the changelings are involved. And I think they essentially are both, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
But,
So
like, there was a line in there, like,
mhm,
Beverly says it. She goes like, I can see why they work together, both trying to destroy, the
the Federation.
exactly.
Right. And they're both collective species, right? Like they
Sure,
both have like an aspect of a hive mind mentality.
sure.
So I think there's some similarities there. Although it's like inevitably they'll probably end up fighting with each other at some point, but they're like, let us take this portion down first, right? Um, I wanted to. So Jack does eventually find the Borg Queen, who is voiced in this episode by Alice Krieg, who is our kind of OG Borg Queen from the movies and from the final couple of episodes of TNG. Um, I was hopeful. I wasn't sure because of Annie Wershog's illness if she was able to film. I know they went right into filming this season after season 2.
Mhm.
So I think Annie did an incredible job portraying the Borg
Yep.
Queen last season. So I would have been happy with either, but I know some
Mhm.
fans are going to be really excited to see Alice, I think, back in that seat. I thought it was interesting we didn't see her face yet. We just got that very menacing back
Well,
Mhm.
kind of shot, right?
I thought it was going to be interesting because I was looking and waiting and I was wondering because again, like everybody else in this kind of crew, you have to account for the age,
Mhm.
right? And so I don't know that have we ever seen an old Borg?
With the magical of digital aging, it's going to look better on a Borg, right?
Well, I was like, she's always in a ton of prosthetics. So
Yep.
I was
Mhm.
just like, I don't know how much would actually be
Sure.
that affected, or they might just choose to never fully see her
Sure.
outside of shadow. I think there's different ways to play that. Um, uh, kind of moving through, we get sort of the really big exposition dump of like our explanation of the DNA. And essentially, Picard has become Papa Bear to every young member of Starfleet in a very strange way,
Yeah.
where he has now passed on this genetic mutation to everyone. And now not only are all of these um, not only are all of these folks connected with this Borg DNA, but now all of the ships are connected. And I wanted to ask, do y'all feel like this premise is a little familiar from Prodigy?
Yeah.
I thought that. I go like, and like Prodigy happens a little before this, right?
Yes. So Prodigy happens about 5 years before the earliest flashback of Picard. So this has happened before. So I
And then so
feel like,
someone goes like, never mind.
oh, it's not a bad idea to interconnect all of our ships so that they can communicate to each other.
Like what they should have really did was go through their history files and watch, like, that documentary called Battlestar Galactica,
Or that one.
because that's what happened as well.
Yeah, so we shall. I think it's kind of funny that we've gotten to kind of yeah. Phil R, I said this, did Starfleet not learn? I apparently not. Maybe that's why we haven't talked to Janeway. Maybe she's been the lone person who's been like, this is a bad idea, and so they've just been like, you're not involved in Frontier Day because you hate this idea so much. And she's just like, did we not learn?
Yes.
So we shall see. I saw a bunch of people being like, I'm hoping Janeway is going to show up. I don't think she is. From what I have seen, everyone has firmly said that she is just a Prodigy captain at this point.
So
Um,
speaking of kind of guest stars in this
Mhm.
episode, would you consider, so you've got the Borg Queen who we only
Mhm.
we hear her voice.
Mhm.
We have Michelle Barrett who we only hear her voice. Would you consider them as surprise guest stars? And here's my big one. Would you consider, and my answer is already yes, the Enterprise D as a guest appearance?
I mean, sort of in a weird way. I'm gonna be interested. So I don't know if y'all noticed, but on the like Star Trek graphic that comes on before the show
Mhm.
starts. So like the Shrike has been in there for the last
What?
the Shrike is in that sequence
Oh, is
hanging
it?
out in the nebula. And then this
Oh.
one was just Titan, no Shrike. And so I'm like, are they gonna give us the Enterprise D in that graphic next
Oh,
week?
wow.
Because
That's
it changes per series of what ship it
I,
is.
yes, I'm really excited about that now. I would say yes, Clyde. Like I think it would be definitely a character. Like I remember when they were like years ago they're talking about how intricate they make the Enterprise, like down to the sound design of like the engine room, everything. Like it's a person, right?
Mhm.
So so yeah.
Listen, I'm gonna say I was beyond geeked, right? Like I was super excited.
We're jumping the ship, guys. That's like
I
the
know.
very end of this
All right,
episode.
I'm sorry. I'm excited. I'm excited about the ship. Like,
I know, but I was like, there's so
okay.
much happening in the middle.
We'll
We'll
wait.
get
We'll wait.
we'll get to our geek out moment here at the end, like we did at this episode. But I did want to shout out Elizabeth Dennehy, who reprises her role as Admiral Shelby,
Love
who
that.
is our
It was,
old Borg expert.
it was so good. It was so good. She was so mean in the series. Like
And then she's annihilated by some Borg.
that's
I
right. She
mean,
gets shot. It was an unceremonious. Like, what you do? Pew pew.
I know, so rough.
I thought it was so funny. Like like she was not designed for people to like her. Like in that episode, she was gunning after Riker, and I appreciate her forthrightness. And like I remember the line where she goes like, "Permission to speak frankly." Yep, you're in my way. Like you're just like you to hang out under like a great captain like Picard, blah blah blah. Like step aside and let someone else make the big decisions, blah blah blah.
Well, she finally got her shot to sit in the
Whoa,
Enterprise big seat.
She finally got her shot. Period.
What did y'all think of? So essentially the big turnover moment, right, is that anyone who's essentially their frontal lobe has not fully developed yet is been infected with the Borg.
Like my response to that was like, okay, I'm gonna let it go, but there are a lot of 24-year-olds on.
I was like, if all of these ships got taken out that quickly and there's that many, but then I was like, I guess if you think about it in that like naval military style, like, yeah, like almost all of my friends who served in the military who were in those kinds of positions, were in their early 20s while doing it. And then
I guess
they eventually become bigwigs who move on to desks.
So when Geordi was first was helmsman, like in in Enterprise D, how old do you think he was? Because he was lieutenant, right? Lieutenant LaForge.
Wasn't he? Didn't he start out as like an ensign? I think he started as an ensign.
I think he was Ensign LaForge.
Yeah, was like pilot. In the pilot, he was not a lieutenant.
And then season 2, he just went up to chief.
I mean, no, it's a whole thing, but no, they did make him climb a little bit. I think some people got killed. I think there's an episode where some people got killed, and that's how he ended up being chief.
Oh, okay.
There was a chief. There was a chief before him.
So how old do you think LeVar Burton was? At that age, because that's what the age. Like I was going like, oh, they need to make sure the old people win, and so that's how we're gonna write it, and I'm fine with that. But like, it's your one get for the episode.
Yeah. I had to think about like poor Mariner and Boimler having to be taken over.
Assimilated, yeah.
Assimilated. But yeah, I thought that was a very interesting workaround that essentially it's like, oh, if your mind is still malleable, you can be forced into doing things that you might not want to be doing, which I thought was an interesting allegory, about the ideas of how people get indoctrinated into different things. The idea of the Borg is like a cult metaphor, which typically targets a lot of young people, so
it all works. It all works.
I see it. It did feel a little like, okay. I was definitely like, very clever, guys. Very clever workaround. But where was I going? We did see a bunch of ships. There was like a call out to the Pulaski, which I thought was cool. Quite a few ships. I'm telling myself that the fireworks were like holograms of some kind, because I was like, there's no actual way for fireworks to work in space.
Plasma, baby.
So
they're plasma based.
Plasma based, perchance, because I was like, there's no oxygen for them to react to create colors. So
like all I know is like it's several years in the future. I think they figured it out.
I'm sure they have, but it was just like the sound, it's like there's already no sound in space, and we let there be sound. And then like I was like, I'm gonna have to ask Aaron. I have questions about the fireworks.
Myrriah, so you've got a couple answers to your question. The chat, Alana says LeVar Burton was 30, or I guess LeVar Burton was 31 at the start of.
But is that his real age or his character age?
I think this is real age.
Right. So then he's probably playing early 20s.
Yeah. And Takako say graduates of military academies are usually about 21 to 22. Under normal circumstances in the USN, an officer makes lieutenant junior grade in about 2 years or so. So it's like right around that 24 when they become an officer. And, I've played a number of Star Trek role-playing games.
Have you played?
Man, more than I'm willing to admit.
What is this role-playing game you were talking about?
Getting into it. Lose all of my street cred. But yeah, so it does take time to move from ensign to lieutenant and up. So I think the whole to your point earlier, Myrriah, it did feel like, man, you got a lot of young sub 25-year-olds. I would think that there would be some more, especially because this is, it's Starfleet. Like you want more chief medical officers and more heads of securities that are older than 25. It felt like they took over. They took over pretty quickly.
Oh, but you could also make the argument that Starfleet is a very diverse institution, and maybe there are a lot of other species whose prefrontal cortex develops at a different time, blah 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 blah.
Because the lifespan of a lot of other species of folks is a lot, right? Like Vulcans live way longer,
double,
than humans do. So that's pretty interesting. This is an interesting thought. Rosie says, time for Picard to call Borg Queen Girardi to help. Remember, she said you have a friend inside the Borg.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that that's not going to happen, but I was thinking that.
Why do you think it's going to? I've been waiting for Girardi to show up for 3 episodes now. So.
Yeah, I would love for it to happen, but I don't know if the trajectory of the season leads to a Borg on Borg conflict.
A Borg on Borg space
fight
would be really cool.
I hear you.
Be awesome.
But I think it has I think the season and series has to end with love. You're my son, blah blah blah. You can do it,
in
Jack.
The same
blah,
way
blah,
that.
blah.
We've seen the power of connection when Zero was able to break away from the Borg collective, right? By remembering his friends, remembering their friends, and being like, I'm already a part of a collective. I don't need them.
Yeah, power of love.
Well, it's also, I think,
you don't need money, don't need
no latinum necessary
to ride this train. Oh, I'm singing again.
Yes. Here's where I'm torn a little bit, right? Because on one hand, like I said, man, if they had given me a TNG reboot in season 1, I would have been so happy. Now that we finally have it, though, the thing I miss is when we think about the Picard crew we started with, they're all gone, right? So for us to bring back Girardi, Alison Pill, even as the Borg Queen, feels like it makes sense because at this point, all of the original Picard people are somewhere else, right? Including Rafi, who stayed on the ship, which I really don't understand that decision.
With Seven.
Captain Seven. Hello, show some respect.
Yeah, but they're all of them should have got off that ship. So
yeah, I don't really know why we couldn't get everyone on the shuttle. It didn't seem like that many people to really take out, but which did unfortunately result in us losing Shaw. I was really
You were moved, weren't you? You know what?
I was so sad.
Because he's a good character.
He's a really fun character.
Yeah, that's right. He's a good character.
He is the voice of reason on this show.
He's the Vox of Picard.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Paul.
don't understand why. I really don't, because I'm like, yo, you've introduced us to a character who, and I'll say it, Shaw was a franchise player, right? Like Shaw was someone that you can go, if you want to spin off, like you keep that in your pocket in case you decide you want to spin off later, because you can build a show around him as captain. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to have Captain Seven. Like, I don't want that to deter. I'd love to see like a really angry, semi-retired Admiral Shaw who's just like bossing people around from a desk, kind of in semi-retirement because he's been injured, on this ship or something like that, or at least a reoccurring sort of character. But yeah, I was really sad to see him go. But I did appreciate, I mean, it's kind of funny in retrospect to have him being assassinated by Borg and in that moment decide he's okay with his ex-Borg number one.
Yeah, like when he got shot, I was going like, well, I guess the Borg finally got you.
Yeah.
It took him a little time, but they caught up with you, buddy.
I mean, it was a nice bit. Like, if we are to think that this is the full close of the book on Shaw, it is like a pretty nice redemption kind of arc for his whole character.
Redemption.
Yeah, because for internal redemption, because he was not, he watched all of his friends and his crew die during
Sure.
Wolf 359, and like he then sacrificed himself to get everybody off of the ship this time. And so I think it's like to me, that feels very writerly in a way to wrap up his story.
He will be missed. Moment of silence.
That's too long for podcasting.
Right?
We appreciate you, Shaw. It was a good run. I am worried about our gals, Seven and Raffi, being left on the Titan, and the fact that we're now going to be relegated to like a sub D plot line check-in with them at some point next episode. I'm like, they either need to save the day, I need them to kiss, and then everything will be okay in my book.
I will say that, like, watching this episode, Seven got some moves. Mm-hmm. She is karate chop master.
She's really been underutilized this season. I'm really sad about it.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, in any spinoff talks, I hope it is a Seven fronted show. That would, Jerry Ryan can do no wrong for me, which is where I'm like, sometimes I will admit, as someone who's not the TNG person, and I had to kind of put myself in the seat of like, if TNG was my show, like if this was Voyager and I was watching all of the Voyager crew get back together, I was like, I understand like the enthusiasm, the like overarching like love of what is happening. But I was like, man, if they do my girl Seven wrong, I'm gonna be really upset.
So, I mean, I guess here's where I'm at. Like, I've read a number of kind of the Star Trek novels, and in a number of them, especially the Titan series, what you have is you have a collection of people from across the Star Trek universe. You've got people from Voyager, you've got people from TNG, you've got people from DS9 who come together in this collection. And it's great because what you ultimately have is, Myrriah's been podcasting with me long enough to know that I love a team up. And so I would have been absolutely okay. I didn't think that you needed this. Well, it has to be the original group, right? The OGs. I felt like you could have brought Seven and Raffi in there as part of that. Because first of all, like real talk, the thing about the Titan and some of these other ships is they're these big ships that can be run on a minimal complement. The Enterprise D is a flagship. Like right now, you got everybody on the bridge. Seven could have been in the engineering room or astrometrics or somewhere else. Like you're gonna need every hand you can get. So having her and Raffi on that ship would have been great, right? Not to mention, again, at the end of the day, I still think that Raffi, Seven, and Shaw all could have got out together. I didn't, jump in, close the door. They can't shoot through the doors. You'll be fine. So I really felt like I kind of wanted them in there. I didn't need it just to be the original cast. Like I wanted them in that ship.
Yeah, I mean, Chibi brings up a good point. I don't think the Enterprise D can do it alone. And so I think there's going to be a big saves the day moment from them, which is what I'm hoping, and not a we are going to sacrifice ourselves to save the day moment, which is what I fear will happen. And I will be forever angry at Terry Metalis if he kills Seven or Rafi. On site, Terry. If you do anything to my girls, I will be majorly upset. Okay. Finally, we get to our big. It's so funny. There's so much exposition dumping, and then like it's actually such a short episode, and then we finally get to our big reveal. We get the full Trek ship moment, almost lower deck style, in how long it takes, as far as like a little bit funny, like the slow walk in. We get the full panel of the bridge, all the electronics. We get an engage. We get to make it so. We get all the things. How is it experiencing all of that again for the first time in a long time?
I thought it was a little funny, like it was interesting. And maybe this was just me thinking about this, but you have all these characters who have lived life and they've all become leaders, captains.
Apparently Worf did something to the E.
Yes.
We actually don't know. There's theories. I did a bunch of digging. There's some theories in books and comics and games of what it could be, but none of them are canonical. So I don't know for sure.
But like this idea that like, Geordi sits down at the helm, like as a helmsman, was just kind of like, put some respect on his name. He's a Commodore now, right? Like, just, it's kind of like, it's just, Picard being Picard, like sliding everybody back into their spot without any reference to, they're not the kids they were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So it's interesting. It was something I was thinking about as I'm watching everybody kind of take their seats. Though I don't know where Beverly's standing because she's usually not on the bridge, but
she's making space for herself. What I saw someone asked a question in the chat, and then I was going to try to answer it. Paul, what did you think about seeing the ship for the first time in a while?
I was remarkably non-nostalgic.
I did get a little goosebumpy, and I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't get like I saw some folks who got really emotional online, but I did get, when that swell of music comes up, music usually gets me,
Like, and I think it's because I watch so many reruns. I go like, I just say, oh yeah, they're here, about time,
It wasn't like waiting for so long.
Exactly. I will say that with Worf, like, for Worf to have done something to the E is hilarious because he's on the E twice. He was on like in Star Trek 7, right? Like First Contact. Oh yeah, 3 times, right? He was only on it in the movies because he was on Deep Space Nine. And then every now and then he gets like, a little like, oh, I have vacation, I'm going to say hi to like, the gang. So like he's not like super invested in like, whereas like he was 7 years on on the D. And his response is like, yeah, I like the weapon systems there on the E. I'm like, dude, what happened to that peaceful meditation, dude? You so.
I did see someone's asking about like Vedek's hand. And Terry Metalis has confirmed that the person talking and giving orders to Vedek was the Borg Queen. So that has been confirmed. So I'm not sure where the changelings sort of I mean, a bunch of these crew members are changelings, so they're around seemingly. So it's like both Borg and changelings taking over these ships, I suppose.
Oh yeah, that could be it.
I did like Data's I hope we die quickly in the shuttle. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, the carpet line got me.
No, it was a good line. It was a good line.
It was a good one. But yes, we kind of end the episode with no plan, but with a cool reference of a ship, and the team is split up again. And I'm not quite sure what is going to happen next episodes. I do wonder if, because Jack is now plugged into the collective, if I guess it's time for where
Myrriah
is it?
theory.
Well, first of all, I think we know who's actually going to come in and save the Federation and fully redeem herself is Peanut Hamper is going to be the one who infiltrates the collective.
Well, you need to deal with the collective with an artificial intelligence.
Exactly. And it's going to be Peanut Hamper.
Oh man. See, last week I was waiting for it. This week you got me. 40 minutes in. You got me.
You're welcome.
I hate that. I'm always like, Myrriah's like, well, it's very serious. I'm literally like leaned in, like, oh, where's she going? I can't wait to see where she's going. And then boom.
Yeah. But no, in reality, my prediction is because Jack is now plugged into the collective, right? So Jack is going to be, the Borg think he is their savior and he is inevitably going to be their demise, right? Like in some capacity, Jack's humanity will prevail and stop the Borg from taking over everything. That is my official prediction. But what do y'all think is going to happen next week? Oh, Phil R comes in with an even better one. The Queen is Peanut Hamper.
Wow, Phil, you're coming in hot.
Killing it, Phil.
Phaser set to kill.
And yes, Jack's new name is Vox, according to the Borg Queen.
What will happen? I think in the end, you kind of want the the remote control fleet to be able to do something. So I imagine the fleet will attack the Borg ship. I assume that someone will try to sacrifice himself but be beamed out just in time. I do feel the power of love will save the day, blah blah blah. Because Jack was wrong to go up against the Queen. Like that wasn't the right thing to do, right? We can objectively say that, right?
Yeah.
It got Shelby shot.
It did.
So it got Shaw shot. So
we've already had quite a bit of death. Yeah.
If just because he decided to go, I'm gonna. So
I do wonder what the status of the leadership will look like at Starfleet post this, because it means that essentially all the youngins, once they deborgify everybody, are the only ones left unless people manage to hide from the assimilation crews.
Well, hey, everyone might not have been on a starship. They might have been on space dock, which will be
blown up
in ruins by
This is where I'm trying to remember, what do we know from Discovery about the history of the Federation? We know that they're strong enough that they're taken down almost permanently much later for something else. So ultimately we know they rebound from this.
And we know we eventually go into some sort of time travel kind of war situation.
It's a time war, from Enterprise. So they have to be part of that. That's the 25th century, right? I think that's when it happens.
I think so.
Something like that. We're in the 23rd century, right?
Yes.
Well, and shortly after, right? Shortly after the time war, the burn.
Currently we're in 2401.
So they're gonna make it. Surprise, surprise. I do wonder though, anyway, they're gonna make it, and then dilithium is gonna be bad. So that's what you got.
And then we have to rebuild. Yeah.
That's right. It's yeah. But I don't know. It's one of those things where I am very curious if they're gonna wrap it up cleanly. If all the pieces are in place to wrap it up cleanly. I don't, because if there is, I don't see how they're coming together. But that's a good thing.
But don't we say that every season finale for every franchise that we've had so far? I feel like we say that for Discovery, we say that for Strange New Worlds, we say that for Lower Decks. Maybe we might even say it for Prodigy. I feel like we get to the last episode and we always say, I don't know how they're going to wrap it up. And then they wrap it up and we all go, they wrapped it up. Right? Isn't that what happens? Almost every, and I know with Picard, we're always looking how are they going to get to the end?
Yeah. I mean, do we think, I mean, I'm leaning closer and closer to this show ends with Picard on a planet, hopefully with Laris sipping a drink. But
I don't know how we get there.
I don't know how we get there, but I feel like I asked this question early on in this series, and I'm gonna pose it again. Do we think this season ends with the death of Picard to sacrifice himself for the sake of the fleet? No.
I do.
I
Well, not even.
don't.
I would say not even for the sake of the fleet. This is what a dad does. Like for Jack, this is what a dad does. That's what I'm expecting. I am expecting this to be the death of Picard in an epic way.
But like, I'm not gonna lie. How is it gonna look epic? What's Picard gonna do?
He takes the ship and solo crashes it into a Borg cube.
I would say he goes into the Borg cube, he plugs in, and he goes battle to battle with the Borg Queen, killing them both, right? To save everyone.
Maybe like all I know is like Picard doesn't have any powers, right? Like he got the janky model positronic, or with the governor, like the governor series, like so like it's so I don't know, maybe I hope and the Borg, they've been hiding for the last 10 years. I can guarantee you that they're
I mean,
slightly
that ship didn't look in good condition, I will say. That Borg cube that they pulled up on. Because we all know Janeway did her job.
But also Myrriah.
No, she didn't, because the Queen's still there.
Well, she tried.
But here's the thing that you've got to consider is that Jack was roaming that Borg cube. Did you see one drone?
Exactly.
Like, because normally
I think
drones
this is
come
the
out
creation of a bunch of new drones. I think they did not have any drones, and this is how she's able to get new ones, right?
Yeah, you gotta fire your phaser at them until they modify the shield frequencies, and then you run fast.
Rotate your phaser frequency, right?
Yeah, then you gotta run because now you got nothing. You throw them at them, and then you get out of there.
Like, if that is the case, it'd be good. Like, I would really be like, if Janeway's neurolytic catalyst or whatever, blah blah blah, did its job, and it's just the Queen by herself and able to, and there are no more drones, and this is how they. I think that'd be pretty slick. But like if you look at the Borg ship, it's not just one cube,
right?
It's it's pretty big, and in in the last episode of Voyager, like the complex blew up, right? So I don't know, like and Janeway would have gotten back about 35 years ago, and they've only seen the Borg have been missing for only 10 years. So, the Borg, they stayed around, so they must have had
some inkling that they were out there.
Yeah. But I think you could save some budget by not showing any drones.
That too.
Well, people are saying they see a couple of them in the background. So
yeah, there could have been some.
I didn't see any. I was looking and I didn't see it, but I believed it. I believe our people.
Raymond brings up an interesting point, is that portal tech is still hanging out somewhere in space. And so perhaps, I think Peanut Hamper could come in with that piece of portal technology.
Wow, double peanut. Extra peanut.
Nice.
Extra peanut.
Okay, extra peanut.
Hope you don't have any allergies.
That's right.
but that piece is just still floating out in space. So there is the potential that the Enterprise could go swoop up and pick that up, or perhaps Seven and Rafi go pick that up and bring it into the game.
I like that.
It might be hard though, because it was next to a space egg blow up, right?
So yeah, but they definitely showed it just floating in space.
Like before the nebula blew up?
The nebula never blew up. It just gave birth.
Okay, like we have different definitions of what a space birth looks like then.
Yes, I thought I'm on space birth.
Yeah. So, but yes, like I did have a question though. Like let's say you're what you call it, you're whoever, you're this changeling. You steal Picard's body, and then you go and go like, oh, you know what? Rather than just blow up this whole station, let's steal another thing just to divert. Like, wouldn't you just blow everything up? and that way they wouldn't know what's missing.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure blowing it up might be harder than sneaking on and stealing stuff, though.
You think?
As changelings who can look like Starfleet officers and just waltz in and take stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Maybe.
I also think they're trying to have a low profile, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to paint this as some criminals stealing portal tech as to be terrorists, that's believable,
Sure,
right?
sure.
If you're looking at somebody who blew up this uber secretive Daystrom station, you're not going to think that was some run of the mill gangsters. That's a superpower who did that.
Maybe. Like, I'm just surprised they didn't steal the attack tribbles, because that was just like
Those things were terrifying.
that like this
Yeah, they
one
were.
attack tribble in like Cisco's restaurant on Earth. Boom, game over.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if y'all have been listening to the Pod Directive, the Star Trek official Star Trek podcast that Tawny Newsom and Paul F. Tompkins do, but they recently had Moshe Kasher on to talk about the episode of Deep Space Nine that goes back to Trouble with Triples.
Yep. Love it.
And it's such a fun watch.
No, it's a great episode.
But yeah, solid rec.
Maybe we can get our Patreon team to do a watch along for Back to the Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
And so if you happen to be a Patreon member, you can come watch it with us.
Yeah, we'll make some time for that. Anything else y'all wanted to talk about in this episode?
No. Like, I'm curious how it. Like, does anyone know why the formation looks so weird of the ships?
I was trying to figure out if it was in that Borgy. It looks
Language?
like Borg language
Yeah,
at
sure.
the end, but if they were doing that prior to the assimilation,
Yeah. So I didn't know it was. I was going like, is it saying something? Is it saying like resistance is futile, which would be hilarious.
Picard. It says Locutus.
That's right.
Yeah, I can't translate Borg. Cheapy with a good call. We should probably watch First Contact.
Oh yeah,
that would be fun.
That's the original Frakes.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry.
And then Lise says it looked like DNA strands, which would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that would be
like
pretty interesting.
Who's sitting on who's sitting on the Titan captain's chair right now? Esma, right? Or
yeah, I think Esma.
And I'm going like
I was gonna say that was what was interesting about that, Paul. If you go back a couple episodes when Vedic was on the bridge, and she was threatening, and she was gonna kill. Didn't she say something like, "How old are you?" or something like that? To
tell me about yourself, I guess.
Tell me about yourself. And then she ultimately killed
the Vulcan.
Do you think maybe the Vulcans can't be assimilated in that way?
Or
because
maybe
of their age?
Yeah, I think the age. So I think that she if you go back and think about who she killed the older bridge crew.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
That is interesting. No, I like that. No, it's pretty good. Go Vedic.
Fascinating. Well, yeah, I think that's it for us this evening, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next week to talk about this finale, TBD, on what is going to be happening. We shall find out how Peanut Hamper saves the day.
Triple peanut.
Triple peanut. Gonna happen. Yes, you can find us at StarTrekPod.co. You can find links to our Patreon as well as how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast in Apple or Spotify. Clyde, how can people find us and tell us their theories on Twitter?
Hit us up at Star Trek Pod. Thank you to Karen who runs our Twitter. What's up, Karen? Thank you.
We thank you. Get ready for lots of Peanut Hamper gifts. We will see you all next week. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There are 4 nights.